Daniel Pemberton, an Oscar nominee for The Trial of Chicago 7, an Emmy nominee for Black Mirror, whose score for Welcome to Earth is on NatGeo, all episodes streaming on Disney Plus. I'm sure there are a lot of places you could start with this score and this project. Like, how did you approach it coming in for a nature docu-series like this? Where'd you start?
I think, one of the big things about this series is it doesn't feel like any other nature doc series. I think partly because of Darren Aronofsky's involvement and the way he sort of visualized like this whole series had to feel very different. And that's kind of what got me excited about it, because I always want to do something different. And a lot of this for me was like seeing the world in a way you've never seen it before. And so I wanted the music to have that same sense of the unexpected, the unusual. So, when you're seeing anything from a volcano to like a tiny cell on a plant, I wanted the music to be very like different to what you'd heard before in nature documentaries. So that was a big thing, because I wanted, when you have music that tells you, hey, here's that thing you've heard before, here's a big brass chord that goes like this. Well, I actually got brass sound up here, here's a big magnificent mountain, so it's going to be like, I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be like a sound and an approach that made you go, hang on, what's going on here? And so you engage with the story and the environment in a different way.
So are you starting that from when you get the visuals? Like, how do you approach it? Because like, you're right. Like when I watch the show and then even listen back to your score, I'm like, this sounds almost otherworldly at times. And like, obviously like the visuals are stuff like I've never seen before either. It's just an incredible, the cinematography is unbelievable and everything. So how did you where do you start, I guess, from there?
I mean, it's a bit of everything with this show. I mean, like, yeah, the cinematography on this series is absolutely mind-blowing. And every time you get some new stuff in, you'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, where is this even real? Like, this bit was a car driving, there's the one with the car driving over the Mirror Lake. And you're like, how does this even make sense? So what I would do is I started writing early on. I tried to create a palette of sounds. I sort of tried to create an orchestra out of non-orchestral elements. It was, it was trying to create sounds and textures and sort of instruments that I would kind of create and build myself out of sounds of nature, of wildlife, of electronics, and things that felt unconventional. And then I would look at visuals and use that as inspiration, and then start writing blind. Sometimes I would write stuff very specifically to picture. It was a very fluid edit on this series. So I found I would often get the best results by watching things, being inspired by, the amazing cinematography, being inspired by the world they were showing, and then writing a piece of music for that, but away from it. And then as the show progressed, we'd start like fine-tuning things and then start putting them together more. What
was like the weirdest sound, for lack of a better question, like that you found or that you were like excited to use in the score?
This is a weird one, because I've been collecting sounds for years, right? Like I build and try and make as much of my own sounds on projects. And so anytime I go away, I grab a tape player. Well, even the iPhone, like actually this, one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that this iPhone, which is a very battered, broken one, I have a fancy newer one. But I've recorded lots of stuff on this, to the extent that even the film Yesterday, the Danny Boyle film, features a cue, which is literally taken off voice memos, a guitar part off this. No mixing, and it's in a Hollywood film. So you can get great stuff off these. And so I will record. I remember being in Oslo, and I was in a sculpture park in Oslo, and it was snowing. And there's this weird metal sculpture that had just the most amazing reverb. So I was just like, right, I'm going to stand in here and make lots of strange noises, whistles, shouts, calls. And then I'll just record them. And then one day they will come in handy. And guess what? They did about 4 years later for this show. So this show allowed me to sort of plunder this, like my own sort of travels in sound over around the world, and sort of pull all those sort of ideas together. So, I mean, there's so many different things. There's like a load of water recordings I'd sort of made on holiday. I I mean, I should probably get NatGeo to put in the budget, like basically to fly me around the world, just going to cool places, recording sounds.
You could go with the whole show, maybe, right? I mean, like this.
Yeah, that would be. That's the one thing that sucked about the show is, like, I wrote most of this during COVID, so I was just stuck in this room, like, for so long, and I'm okay with that. But there's something kind of like masochistic about being stuck in one room and seeing someone go to the ends of the earth on some of the most exciting adventures and journeys.
It's truly funny. Do you like, is there a different approach when you do a docu-series like this as opposed to a narrative film, or is the kind of, is it the same, like you're just trying to tell a story? Like, how do you separate it at all?
Yeah, I mean, every job I do, I try and do very differently. So if you know, if you're familiar with my other work, but like, I always try and make it very different. So, like, right now I've got like in sort of the kind of this moment, we've got like Slow Horses, which is a spy show, which has got a totally different sound to The After Party, which has a totally different sound to this, which has a very different sound to Spider-Verse or something. And so I always look at what I feel is right for the project. And then I try and do something where I'm starting afresh with like a whole new palette. And I think one of the things with a doc series like this is the narrative demands are different to a drama. And there are still narrative demands, like, let's say the opening of I think it's the first episode where they're driving up to this volcano. You're spotting all these kind of things. I need to hit this. We need to get the sense of fear here. We need to get a turning corner when we get into this. But you can write in a different way. And so I think I kind of embraced the freedom that this series gave me, that allowed me to sort of be a bit more experimental and play around a bit more. So I say from that point of view, yeah, this was a slightly different approach, but it's different for everything I do, really.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about your stuff, is it always sounds different. Well, you mentioned before Darren Aronofsky is the EP. Like, what kind of feedback do you get from him, or like does he have, it feels like from looking at his films, it feels like he has a strong sense of music and how, like, a specific sound maybe, but what was his feedback like?
Yeah, I mean, he built like a very big style guide, which I think was very important to the series and the look and the feel of the series. And, that had a big impact on how I approached this. And one of the reasons I agreed to do this series was the fact that his style and his approach was not the typical approach for what is basically in some ways a nature documentary. And, that involvement is what allows you to push the envelope a bit further. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this was make this feel unlike any nature documentary you'd seen before and sound like no nature documentary you'd seen before.
You mentioned like how like you obviously hop around a lot of different genres and stuff. When you do something like this, did you learn something on this that you think of to take to the next project, or like, even though if it's going to sound so different and everything's individualized, like how do you like grow, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's good about doing a different approach trying to do a different approach on every project is you always at the beginning, you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, rather than like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other film, but I'll just change the noises. So there was a ton of stuff. I mean, one of the things I really loved doing in this film, which is kind of weird, was I was stuck at home. It was COVID. It was very hard to organize musicians or anything. So I ended up doing so much of this kind of on my own. And I like that. I like kind of trying to say, right, limitations. You got to do everything. No leaning on, beautiful orchestras or things like that. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to do some vocals. I was writing a track. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to record these myself. Now, I cannot sing. I'm a terrible singer. Okay. And it's not like, oh, I'm a terrible singer. I'm very modest. Not shit. I'm awful. But I was also realizing I wanted to record vocals. So I did a thing where I just tried this technique out of slowing tracks down, singing them in the pitch that I could just about get away with, covering them in auto-tune and like pitch correction, then speeding the tracks back up. So I'm then singing in a higher pitch voice and it sounds more unusual and less human. Again, the approach all the way through this was to try and make things feel unusual and unexpected. So I didn't want it to feel like a human singing or a terrible film composer singing, obviously. And so I did a whole bunch of those, and then through all this sort of technical jiggery pokery, and then sort of degrading it through tapes and things, suddenly get these really haunting, weird vocals, which are in a bunch of the tracks as well. And that was a great, that was just like me messing around, trying out a new technique, which I wouldn't have done on any other show, I don't think. But this one gave me the freedom to do that. And I'm like, oh, that's quite cool. So, there's always little bits, or like there's this other synth actually here. This synth. And that I sort of used a bit of it to learn how to program, to try and learn how to program that synth, and got some really cool kind of unusual sounds out of it.
That's awesome. This score is awesome. You can listen to it on all streaming services, I guess. And also the show is Welcome to Earth, NatGeo show on Disney Plus. Daniel Pemberton, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.